I know that you've also got commission pieces at a penthouse in Greenville and a hospital in Mount Pleasant.
Right.
And a law office in New York or Chicago?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. So, that are not wall pots. So
Right.
how did the development and working with maybe just pick one that you would consider to be typical?
Okay.
How did that differ from doing something with
I'll compare
pots?
two that were, kind of interesting. The Mount Pleasant project I loved it because the architects had planned on 2 floors of this medical facility. There was a hallway with 5 niches on each floor. And they selected 2 artists, one artist for each floor, to have their work represented in all 5 niches. And so the good part about that was that they were able to select some existing work to go in the niches. And then I created some other pieces to go in the niches. And they were much more organic. It was like one that I did with a magnolia and the leaves and the branches and all this kind of stuff. And so what I did with that was I did a drawing that was to scale so that we would know how it would look in those niches. And then the other ones, I still did line drawings. They selected a couple of groups of pods doing different things. And those pods were already made, and so they could see what those were going to look like. And then I had some other similar works that they could look at from Fox and Rothschild, for example. So they could see what the color would be. I don't usually color the drawings because they're not going to be like the clay pieces. And it would be kind of a waste of my time and deceptive. And so by showing people the actual colors I'll be using in other pieces, they can sort of use their own sort of imagination and, to see what those colors are going to look like on the scale drawings. The Fox and Rothschild one was probably the most complicated one I have done thus far. And they wanted to represent the seasons on 2 walls of a dining room. And so up to that point I had done a lot of this big floor piece with branches and petals and leaves and pods and all kinds of stuff. They loved those, but they wanted something in color. And so what I did was I did some 2-scale drawings, for them to start with. I showed them what the colors would look like. And then I mailed those drawings up there so they could put them on the wall and I could see if they looked like they were the right scale, and they were, and then the drawings came back to me, and I actually used the drawings on a table, put plastic over the top, and created the piece right on top of the drawings. And so they were about as close as they could get to the scale. And then I, sent them pictures all along as these were in process. Usually I do the pieces and I charge the client for the shipping. And if it's far away, the installation has to happen on that end. And in this case, I was working with the Fox and Rothschild art agent. And so she took care of the installation. But it meant I had to send those pieces so they would go right on the wall, and I wasn't going to be doing it, And so we devised a system where very carefully I measured out where all the holes would go behind it and created a series of bolts that looked like they had big fat heads on them. So the piece would slide on there, and then I knew what the thickness of clay was. So once the bolt head was behind that, then they would slip down only about maybe 1/4 of an inch. and they would be on the wall. But what I was able to do was to send a heavy acetate piece that marked exactly where all the holes were going to go and exactly what size they were going to be. So all they had to do is put it on the wall, drill the holes, take that off, tear that thing off, and put the pieces right on there, and they went up perfectly. And so that was probably the most complicated one I've had to do and turn over to somebody else, to actually install. So I'm glad to know that it can be done without me, if need be.
Excellent.